It's fair to say that the campaigns of Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren are going to hedge on whether or not they can defend, and not just defend, but gain ground on this argument of Medicare for all. It has become a hill by which they would either live or die on. And for the most part, they're living on it. The majority of Democrats, by a tune of almost 70%, would prefer a candidate that is pushing for Medicare for all. And the awesome part about this is, if you think about 4-5 years ago, off the table. When Obama was running in 2008, 9 years ago, off the table. You could barely make the argument about a public option. And here we are today, where the argument of Medicare for all is not just a fringe argument, but the argument, the definitive argument in regards to this particular contest. Right now, Joe Biden is skating on electability, and he is literally arguing about Medicare for all, being against it. Now, the catch here is he is on the defense for this argument. The media and so forth may be shocked that the public is on board for this, but the public is indeed on board for this, especially when they realize they can keep their own doctors. Insurance companies have raped the public blind. Pharmaceutical companies have raped the public blind. Here's the whirlwind. Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, in this debate with Joe Biden on the exact same stage. These are the three frontrunners. And as such, the arguments that these guys are making are the arguments for and against Medicare for all. The fact of the matter is, I got to be honest, whatever you want to think of Elizabeth Warren, her and Bernie Sanders together make an amazing team. They talk about this stuff in slightly different ways. But the slightly different ways that they talk about it gives a certain resonance that meets both sides in a particular feeling and intellectual base, if that makes sense. Warren has this notion of almost talking about it in a professorial way. It works. Sanders talks about it with a certain indignation that the society has allowed such to take place and that this needs to be changed. And yeah, he has policy prescriptions for it, but a certain righteous indignation comes across in him that resonates. Both of them talking about this together works. It just works. Hence, if Sanders wins, she should be in his campaign. She has to be. The way she talks about this works. And my point is, both of them together make an awesome team in defending and making ground on Medicare for all. What I will guarantee you is at the end of this debate, when they do polling and everything else, Medicare for all would have gained ground. It did not lose at all in this particular debate. And if anything, it comes out sounding damn good as a healthcare plan. I've said before that it's my red line. And I've even said that Elizabeth Warren believes in Medicare for all in theory, where Bernie Sanders believes in it in practice. But the fact that she believes in it in theory allows her to stand on that stage and say and defend it full-throatedly because, again, she believes it in theory. And it only helps her from the context of a one-to-one when she's standing beside Sanders and both of them are strongly, full-throatedly, without hedge, defending the same plan. It works. Again, Biden did not look well in this. Ultimately, at the end, he ends up using his dead son as a prop in order to kind of as a smoke screen to get out of Dodge. And goes back into almost robotically repeating his campaign video. It doesn't necessarily work for him. And in fact, it becomes almost obvious that his dead son is being used as a dodge in this case. He doesn't get the better of this argument. In fact, he gets the worst of this argument. Warren and Sanders make an amazing team at explaining Medicare for all. And in this particular case, I want to go through the arguments about it. It went on for almost 30 minutes where they allowed these guys to flesh this out. The people on stage essentially give their particular perspectives of Medicare for all and their own plans of what they were going to do for healthcare. But ultimately, the argument is, do you agree with Medicare for all or not? And if you don't, what do you have as an alternative? None of the alternatives, none, touch the arguments that these two were making for Medicare for all. Welcome to Soapbox After Dark. Let's do a deep dive into the arguments that are being made for and against Medicare for all. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you dig this content, you find yourself coming back here often, please like, share, subscribe. We're growing. We're at, almost 25,000. Also, if you really like this content, please consider supporting through PayPal or Patreon, and of course, Super Chats. The Democratic debate, there were parts of this debate that I found really interesting. This conversation was one of them. And the media, meaning the debate themselves, even though they tried to freeze Sanders out in much of this debate, at this particular point, they allowed Sanders and Warren to give a full-throated argument and defense and even push forward on this notion of Medicare for all. I mean, Sanders at one point turns to Joe Biden, you need to defend 500,000 people going bankrupt, or all of these people losing their jobs, or losing their health care. You got to defend us paying twice as much as the rest of the world. These are things that you need to defend if you want to push forward your particular healthcare system. And again, having insurance is not the point. Having insurance is not the point. I had insurance when I was younger. My mom had insurance on me when I was younger, and yet those medical bills and insurance bills ate her alive, because every time you go to the hospital, if you have an illness that's chronic, every time you go to the hospital, every time you go to your doctors, that's a bill. Call it a tax if you want to call it a tax. But it's over and over. You go to the doctor, you go to a specialist, you start getting treatments. You have to go to the hospital because you need a particular surgery or procedure. You got to get a medication. All of these are bills, and all of these are with insurance. So this notion that you're pushing for insurance as if this is the greatest thing on the planet. No, it's not. It is not. And so the argument that Joe Biden is making has to defend a system like that. And it is being put to him in the sense that you need to defend that system. At one point, Joe Biden says, well, this is America. And Sanders was like, yeah, and Americans don't want to pay twice as much for their health care. Joe Biden gets the worst end of this. And this is awesome. What Sanders has done in this debate has made the decision to create a me versus him, a mano a mano, from the standpoint of him versus Biden, to make this. Candidates do this all the time. When a candidate believes that they have pulled forward sufficiently enough that they are winning or they are going to win, and they want to project the fact that they know that they are going to win, they would start ignoring the field and talking to the opponent. So let's say the person is far enough ahead, and now the only person they're talking to is Trump. They're not going to deal with the people who are remaining in the campaign because they believe that those people should get out, and they want the public to get this across that those people should get out, and that they believe that they are in a position that they're going to win. And so they started saying, I'm directing all of my fire at the opponent on the Republican side. Well, the same thing is true within the context of the Democratic primary. Sanders has taken this almost mano a mano approach, and he has some grounds for this, right? Out of 3 of the 4 polls in the various individual states, Sanders is within 3 points of Joe Biden. And so the moment that you have a situation where the lead candidate is not that far in the lead, well, yeah, he can do that, especially when Warren is several points behind. She's in a distant third in some of these states. So he projects a mano a mano. In this debate, oftentimes Sanders pointedly goes after Joe Biden and what Joe Biden's policies are, and making the point of saying, this is what you are for. This is what you are pushing for now. This is not why this is sufficient. This is what you were doing in the past. He hits him on the Iraq war vote. This is, Joe Biden talking about, I believe Cheney and Bush, and Sanders making the point pointedly to him, I never believed Cheney and Bush on that war. That's a strategy in this debate. He's ignored the other people for the most part, and he focused his fire on Joe Biden. I like it. He's establishing himself as a front runner and as the leading candidate of the front runner. And I also think I understand why. The people who are supporting Joe Biden, if Joe Biden is out of the race, those people have said they're going to throw their support behind Sanders. Sanders is the leading candidate to receive the support of people who are supporting Joe Biden. At least that's what it said in the last Emerson poll. If that's true, then you only need to take Joe Biden out. Because if Joe Biden is out, those people, even though some of them may flow to others, ultimately more of them will flow to you, and it will put you firmly in the lead in that race. So him directing his fire at Joe Biden to some degree is to undermine Joe Biden in the lead. Of course, that's goes with a given. But it is more important that you understand that the undermining of the lead allows those people to float to him. It's like Donald Trump attacking the European countries, saying, you guys need to buy more weapons. Why? Because those weapons are going to be coming from us. His supporters are going to essentially go to Sanders, which is why Sanders realizes that it's okay to take down Biden. He ignores Warren because ultimately, even though Warren is trying to pawn herself off as a one-to-one, the arguments that Warren are making for the most part are in defense of Sanders' own priorities. At some point, that difference will have to be felt. But it's very possible that the difference wouldn't necessarily have to be felt at all if the people who are flowing from Biden end up flowing into Sanders, and Sanders establishes a clear lead. I've said that Warren is a problem in the sense that she establishes herself as a one-to-one. She tries to say, look, I'm standing here beside Bernie Sanders on education and healthcare and all this other stuff, when really there are differences. It's just that the mainstream media and the way that they ask their questions aren't asking questions in a way that can ever establish the difference, because they're looking at this stuff in almost general wide lenses and saying there's more of a difference between you and Biden, so let's talk about the differences between you and the other candidates. Just so happened that Warren is closer to Sanders, so it becomes this kind of broad stroke stuff where Sanders and Warren are in a foxhole. It works to his betterment, by the way. And again, if you get rid of Biden support, and that support goes to you, then you don't really have to deal with the problem with Warren. Warren only becomes a problem if she's sucking away your support and sucking away your votes. And she is splitting the vote total, but again, you still may be able to win despite the fact that she's splitting the vote total. And if you can take Biden down, then Warren becomes a non-factor in the race. You establish a clear support. That's my thought anyway, and that's what it seems like he's going with. He squarely pointed his questions at Biden at multiple points within the debate. So let's take a look at Sanders, Warren, putting it down on Medicare for all. This was actually really good. A lot of this debate was a snoozer because for the most part, they ignored Sanders. However, the parts where they did bring Sanders on, especially in this particular early part of the debate where you had like 30 minutes on Medicare for all, no complaints. I loved it. Let's take a look at Biden getting to explain why he doesn't particularly like Medicare for all. Now, here's another point. Biden's healthcare plan leaves people uncovered. Hundreds of thousands of people would die under Joe Biden's plan. Joe Biden needs to own that. I mean, this is his own plan. Nevertheless, and that's the interesting part of this debate. He does get hit for his own plan. It's a fascinating dynamic. All of these guys are almost in a free-for-all. But it does come down to Biden, Warren, Sanders. Again, these are the front runners, and their plans are basically, are you for or against Medicare for all? Biden being against, saying, I want to fix Obamacare, versus against or for Medicare for all, who you get Biden and Sanders. The other people in the debate, in this case, almost don't matter. Brutal, but true. Let's hear it.
Candidates, thank you. Several of you said you are more united than divided, and that is certainly true. All of you agree on one big thing, the goal of defeating President Trump, driving the country in a new direction. But out on the campaign trail, you have outlined big differences over how far to go and how fast to go. And Vice President Biden, the differences between you and the senators on either side of you tonight strike at the heart of this primary debate. Both Senators Warren and Sanders want to replace Obamacare with Medicare for all. You want to build on Obamacare, not scrap it. They propose spending far more than you to combat climate change and tackle student loan debt, and they would raise more in taxes than you to pay for their programs. Are Senators Warren and Sanders pushing too far, beyond where Democrats want to go and where the country needs to go?
That'll be for the voters to decide that question.
That is a thematic question, by the way. Honestly, look, I've said before that this is going to sound strange, but in large measure, the Republican Party doesn't really matter. They matter in the larger sense that you have to win the election. But the thematic struggle in the U.S. politics is taking place now in the Democratic Party, just like it did in 2016, where you had a socialist running against a capitalist, essentially the establishment wing of the party being challenged by its left flank. it was able to win that because it had all sorts of institutional support that was allowing Clinton to exceed through the primary. At which point she got crushed by the Republicans, let's say, right flank, meaning the country wanted something fundamentally different. And what the Democratic Party offered was an establishment candidate. Right now, what you're seeing is the exact same struggle play out. Hillary Clinton wearing pants, less smart, Joe Biden, and to be honest, not quite wrapped tight mentally at this point, and a shadow of his former self, but nevertheless, the establishment's candidate. Right here again, 2016, replaying all over again, with the difference. Two of the leftiest senators in Congress are running against them. And with both of their support, they will overwhelm him, even though right now they're splitting their vote. Despite splitting the vote, the socialists is in striking distance in the various states that they are running in, especially the early states, and has, from the standpoint of polling, is in a virtual dead heat in many of the polls that have come out. Biden is still in the lead, but that lead is dwindling. And they have, almost a year to go. This is the thematic struggle in U.S. politics, whether you believe it or not. The capitalists, Joe Biden, versus the socialists. What each of these guys want to do is fundamentally different in the society itself. Radically different visions of what America can and should be. And even this notion of the social contract, you hear it in the way that they talk. Even though Joe Biden is almost incomprehensible on a lot of this stuff, ultimately you get a general idea that it's not what Sanders wants to do in the direction that they want to take the country. It will be more in a sense of establishment position. But the fact that Warren is in this race, even recounting that stuff, she may be the establishment left pick in that sense. But she even parrots the stuff, getting across that these ideas are popular, especially if you need to get through a Democratic primary. I would say that at some point, the Democratic Party should vote for somebody who represents what they want to do in their vision, not necessarily somebody who they think they're just that will beat Trump because they're terrified of it. Whether they realize it or not, your vision is wrapped into the notion of electability. Vision, in many respects, is one of those things that gets people out of their seats, go to the stadium, go to the polling to vote. This notion of what this country can be is a unifying thing. There's a reason that Sanders has this many donations. There's a reason he's having 10,000 people coming out to the stadiums and filling those stadiums up. There is a reason. This country is screaming for something different. And going back to this dinosaur, this 90s politician, is not the way to deal with it. We've had this contest in 2016. I would hope the Democratic Party has learned something. And either way, it is necessary for this party to be re-ensouled. And the guy to the left, the one that means it, is the one to do it. The question becomes, can he win the primary and change the tenor and the hegemonic shift of what it currently means to be a Democrat? And what I promise you is if he does proceed or win, the cascading effect on the rest of the Democratic Party would be tremendous. You have a ton of pressure coming from the president himself, who has said that he will get out and campaign, literally campaign against other Democrats that are not towing his agenda on Medicare for all. The other Democrats are going to be forced to show their colors. It's a sea change in politics. That's my point. Let's hear him out.
Let me tell you what I think. I think we should have a debate on health care. I know that the senator says she's for Bernie. Well, I'm for Barack. I think the Obamacare worked. I think the way in which we add to it, replace everything that's been cut, add a public option, guarantee that everyone will be able to have affordable insurance, number one. Number two, I think we should be in a position of taking a look at what costs are. My plan for health care costs a lot of money. It costs $740 billion. It doesn't cost $30 trillion. $3.4 trillion a year, it turns out, is twice what the entire federal budget is. That's before it exists now, without interest on the debt. How are we going to pay for it? I want to hear tonight how that's happened. So thus far, my distinguished friend, the senator on my left, has not indicated how she pays for it. And the senator has, in fact, come forward and said how he's going to pay for it, but it gets him about halfway there. There's a lot of other things that need to be done. I have a bold plan to deal with making sure we triple the money for at-risk schools that are Title I schools from 15 to $45 billion.
Just so we're clear, this was a question on healthcare. Just so we're clear, this was a question on healthcare. He's gone back to schools. That's what I mean. He goes into these weird tangents that don't really apply to what he's talking about. Also, that's somewhat of a slight at Elizabeth Warren, calling her somewhat disingenuous. Bernie Sanders has been honest about his plan. Well, if you're going to say that he's been honest, you're saying that to say that the other person hasn't necessarily been honest about how she pays for it. Bernie Sanders, if Joe Biden wanted to, could go to his website and he tells you exactly how he pays for it. Just saying. Let's keep going.
A year. But I go down the line, and each of the things we're talking about, I lay out how I can pay for it, how I can get it done, and why it's better.
Senator Warren, let me take that to you.
One last point, and I'm going to let this and I'm going to leave it. We are, 4 years out from Obama, or no, 3 years out from Obama. They passed the Affordable Care Act. I don't remember the exact year, but immediately after that, for the entire time Obama was in office, we were still dealing with health care. Republicans were still voting to get rid of health care. They were still talking about it in the courts, meaning we're like 8 years out, and we're still talking about health care. Why? Because it didn't fix the issue. It didn't fix the issue. And so this notion that you're going to push through your politics, your establishment order politics, and you believe that the lift that it's going to take you to enact your particular Biden care, whatever Biden care is, essentially a strengthening of Obamacare, that lift is going to be less than the lift it takes to get through a Medicare for All plan. And I understand Medicare for All is going to be pulled at, tweaked, and all this other stuff. But I'm trying to make a very basic point that if you're going to take the lift, let's make it work. Let's do something that actually works. Healthcare should be about healthcare, not this utopian vision that you can have insurance companies working with people and everybody to run through in the sun. No, make it work. Do it. I guess if I'm saying if you're going to do it right. You believe that the lift that it's going to take for your healthcare plan is going to be that much significantly different than the lift that is going to push through Medicare for All. I don't buy it. 8 years out, still talking about healthcare based on Obamacare. And Biden, who was in Obama's administration, now wants to do it again. He shouldn't get the opportunity.
Particularly on what Senator Biden was saying there about health care. He's actually praised Bernie Sanders for being candid about his health care plan. Senator Sanders has been candid about the fact that middle-class taxes are going to go up and most of private insurance is going to be eliminated. Will you make that same admission?
So let's be clear about health care, and let's actually start where Vice President did. We all owe a huge debt to President Obama, who fundamentally transformed health care in America and committed this country to health care for every human being.
That's true. Well, the health care for every human being stuff is stuff that it's the way Democrats talk to one another. It's like the lies that they tell each other. However, that part, fundamentally transforming and shaping America's vision on healthcare is true. That's true. You may not like that, many lefties who don't like Obama. I'm not a huge fan of Obama, but that part is true. America didn't think it could have universal healthcare. And what do you know? Obama comes along and says, we're going to pass Obamacare. And in doing so, this is the government kind of taking a view and a perspective in regards to how healthcare should be handled within the country itself. The Democrats called it universal health care in order to defend from attacks from the Republican Party, who called it socialism and all this other stuff. However, it did shape Americans' vision on whether or not they could have a universal health care system. And it does pave the way, at least in a consciousness aspect, even though it fails as a system per se, because of the utopian vision of keeping healthcare system involved or health insurance companies involved. However, it it crack the egg of the American consciousness in some way in regards to whether or not they can have a universal healthcare system. Obamacare paved the way for essentially Medicare for all. That's my honest thought. I think she's right about that part. Let's hear her finish.
And now the question is, how best can we improve on it? And I believe the best way we can do that is we make sure that everybody gets covered by health care at the lowest possible cost. How do we pay for it? We pay for it. Those at the very top, the richest individuals and the biggest corporations, are going to pay more. And middle-class families are going to pay less. That's how this is going to work.
Direct question. You said middle-class families are going to pay less, but will middle-class taxes go up to pay for the program? I know you believe that the deductibles and the premiums will go down. Will middle-class taxes go up? Will private insurance be eliminated?
Look, what families have to deal with is cost, total cost. That's what they have to deal with. And understand, families are paying for their health care today. Families pay every time an insurance company says, sorry, you can't see that specialist. Every time an insurance company says, sorry, that doctor is out of network. Sorry, we are not covering that prescription. Families are paying every time they don't get a prescription filled because they can't pay for it. They don't have a lump checked out because they can't afford the copay. What we're talking about here is what's going to happen in families' pockets, what's going to happen in their budgets. And the answer is on Medicare for all. Costs are going to go up for wealthier individuals, and costs are going to go up for giant corporations. But for hardworking families across this country, costs are going to go down, and that's how it should work under Medicare for all in our health care system.
Pitch perfect. Pitch perfect. If you run, they're going to chase you your whole life. Pitch perfect. She hitched her wagon to Bernie Sanders' star on this Medicare for all stuff. And God knows she is fucking awesome at explaining it. Because, look, she's right. Every time you go to the doctor and you have to put down whatever you put down, that's a tax. Every time you go and get a procedure, that's a tax. Every time you get a surgery, that's a tax. Every time you need to, like all of those things are taxes on you. So this notion that your taxes may go up somewhat, if you're not paying that stuff out of pocket, what do you care in regards to expenses? Your expenses are going down. That's her point. Him saying, hey, but look, aren't people's taxes going to go up? How much do you pay out of pocket each year for your health care? How much do you pay when your job takes out, $200-300 out of your check? I pay like $250 each month for my health care. My wife pays around the same amount for her health care. And that doesn't even include every time we need to get a prescription, every time we need to get a procedure, every time we need to go to the doctor's office. I need to get medication filled every 2 months. My doctor requires me to come in to get that prescription filled every 2 months because of this stuff with the OxyContin and all this other stuff, the drug laws. I have to pay each month. Like, I guess my point is, every time you have to go to the doctor and you have to pay for that, look at that for the moment as a tax. Look at each month where they take out X amount from your check for your health care. Look at that as a tax. Think for the moment if all of that goes away and some of that gets put back or being paid from your taxes. So let's say you pay $10,000 each year. It's not that amount, but let's say you pay $10,000 in the month or for a year for your health care, just out of your health care premiums. And let's say on top of those health care premiums, you pay a certain amount for the number of times you go to the doctor each year. You pay a certain amount for your medication. You pay a certain amount if you have surgery. All of those things. If all of that goes away, and instead of paying that out of pocket every time you go to the doctor, a portion of that is taken out of taxes. So yeah, you still pay for it. You're just not paying for it out of pocket. And the amount that you're paying for it in taxes, cumulative costs, is less. That's her argument. That's her point. What people care about is the amount of money that they have to pay. If you're asking people, do they have to pay more taxes? That doesn't necessarily apply because they're not necessarily paying for it in regards to them going to the doctor or in regards to the amount of money they have to pay for their premiums. All of that goes away. asking this question about whether their taxes is going to go up entirely ignores the fact that the premiums and everything else will be more than the money that is being pulled out of their taxes, meaning they save. Warren explains this beautifully. Credit where credit is due. Let's hear the next one. Sanders is going to get his chance.
Senator Sanders, you were invoked by the vice president. Also take on that question about taxes.
Joe said that Medicare for all would cost over $30 trillion. That's right, Joe. Status quo over 10 years will be $50 trillion. Every study done shows that Medicare for all is the most cost-effective approach to providing health care to every man, woman, and child in this country. I, who wrote the damn bill, if I may say so, intend to eliminate all out-of-pocket expenses, all deductibles, all co-payments. Nobody in America will pay more than $200 a year for prescription drugs because we're going to stand up to the greed and corruption and price fixing of the pharmaceutical industry. We need a healthcare system that guarantees healthcare to all people, as every other major country does, not a system which provides $100 billion a year in profit for the drug companies and the insurance companies. And to tell you how absurd the system is, tonight on ABC, the healthcare industry will be advertising, telling you how bad Medicare for all is because they want to protect their profits. That is absurd.
Vice
If I could
President Biden, you were
respond,
invoked.
George.
You get a response, then we're going to broaden out the discussion.
Okay, number one, my health care plan does significantly cut the cost of it. The largest out-of-pocket payment you'll pay is $1,000. You'll be able to get into anyone who can't afford it gets automatically enrolled in the Medicare type option we have, et cetera. But guess what? Of the 160 million people who like their health care now, they can keep it. If they don't like it, they can leave. Number one. Number two, the fact of the matter is we're in a situation where, if you notice, he hadn't answered the question. This is about candor, honesty, big ideas. Well, let's have a big idea. The tax of 2% that the senator's talking about, that raises about $3 billion. Guess what? That leaves you about $28 billion short. The senator said before it's going to cost you in your pay. There will be a deductible in your paycheck. You're going to, the middle class person, someone making 60 grand with 3 kids, they're going to end up paying $5,000 more. They're going to end up paying 4% more on their income tax. That's a reality. Now, it's not a bad idea if you like it. I don't like it.
Okay, now I want everybody.
Again, no deductibles, no copays. None of that stuff that you typically pay out of pocket. That stuff goes away. That's why Sanders is shaking his head. He's like, that's nonsense. The people will end up paying less. That's the point. It becomes a progressive tax system where the people at the top end up subsidizing or paying more in their taxes. The more that they pay in their taxes ends up subsidizing your healthcare. So instead of you paying all of the stuff out of pocket where you yourself are just entirely left to your own devices, it becomes a system where essentially taxes increased helps subsidize the health care for the bottom segment of the population, or for everybody else, for the 99% of people in the population. This notion that they're paying more, I guess my point is, it's not that people are paying more. Yes, you pay a deductible in your taxes. The deductible that you're paying is less. And again, under normal circumstances, you're paying a deductible and paying for the health care itself. In this case, you pay the deductible in your taxes and not the other stuff. It ends up coming out to be less that you pay. Let's let him keep going.
Keep to the time, but you did invoke both senators. I have to get responses from them, then we
Sure,
go broaden
that's
out.
good.
Senator Warren, you go first.
So let's be clear. I've actually never met anybody who likes their health insurance company. I've met people who like their doctors. I've met people who like their nurses. I've met people who like their pharmacists. I've met people who like their physical therapists. What they want is access to health care. And we just need to be clear about what Medicare for All is all about. Instead of paying premiums into insurance companies and then having insurance companies build their profits by saying no to coverage. We're going to do this by saying everyone is covered by Medicare for all. Every health care provider is covered. And the only question here in terms of difference is where to send the bill.
Senator Sanders.
Let us be clear, Joe. In the United States of America, we are spending twice as much per capita on health care as the Canadians or any other major country on earth.
This is America.
Yeah, but Americans don't want to pay twice as much as other countries. And they guarantee health care to all people. Under my Medicare for All proposal, when you don't pay out of pocket and you don't pay premiums, maybe you have run into people who love their premiums. I haven't. What people want is cost-effective health care. Medicare for All will save the average American substantial sums of money on his or her health care bill.
Senator Klobuchar, you said in your
Yes. What they said is right. It will save Americans substantial sums of money on their health care bill, and the out-of-pocket expenses go away. The out-of-pocket expenses are vicious because they are, and many times, unpredictable. How do you know if you're not going to get cancer? How do you know if your mom, a family member, is going to get cancer? And what that means under Joe Biden's plan is just because you have health care, you're still being eaten alive by premiums and whatnot. Joe Biden had his shot. And at this point, let's do it right. Medicare for all. I want to go to a few other points. So 26 is Warren. Because they give them an opportunity to flesh this out in a really good way. And honestly, I still say, man, shout out to Warren for this defense. Like it's her and Sanders work very well in tandem in explaining this because they explain this in slightly different ways. Even her point of, people don't love their insurance companies. The reason that she's making that argument is she's kind of making this point like, why are you fighting so hard to keep insurance companies within the medical system? Who are you fighting for? If you're fighting for the American population, you're looking out for the best interest of the population. The best interest of the population is that we do healthcare right, not to maintain the profits of these health insurance companies. That's why she's making this argument of, I don't know anybody who loves their insurance companies. Why do you need them? That's her point. And the fact that Joe Biden is fighting hard for the insurance companies is what she's trying to dig in on. Let's hear.
49 people will lose their.
Klobuchar made the point that, hey, all of these people are going to lose their insurance. Now, this, again, doesn't entirely make sense as an argument to me. Ultimately, people care about whether or not they can access their doctors and whether or not all of their needs are going to be covered. The moment that you say all of your needs are covered, your insurance card is going to change. Where your premiums are going to go to will change. However, you're going to get all of the benefits associated with it. Just pretend that it's a different healthcare company because for all intents and purposes, it is. It's the U.S. government. It's Medicare.
Health insurance.
I'm sorry.
She said page 8 of the bill, 149 people will lose their health insurance.
Look,
current health insurance.
149 million.
Million, excuse me.
so let's be clear about this. People will have access to all of their doctors, all of their nurses, their community hospitals, their rural hospitals. Doctors won't have to hire people to fill out crazy forms. They won't have to spend time on the phone arguing with insurance companies. People who have sick family members won't have to get into these battles. What this is about is making sure that we have the most efficient way possible to pay for health care for everyone in this country. Insurance companies last year sucked $23 billion in profits out of the system. How did they make that money? Every one of those $23 billion was made by an insurance company saying no to your health care coverage.
Mayor Buttigieg.
The problem, Senator Sanders, with that damn bill that you wrote and that Senator Warren backs is that it doesn't trust the American people. I trust you to choose what makes the most sense for you, not my way or the highway. Now, look, I think we do have to go far beyond tinkering with the ACA. I propose Medicare for all who want it. We take a version of Medicare, we make it available for the American people, and if we're right, as progressives, that public alternative is better, then the American people will figure that out for themselves. I trust the American people to make the right choice for them. Why don't you?
Senator Sanders, 45 seconds.
George, you talked about, was it 150 million people on private insurance? 50 million of those people lose their private insurance every year when they quit their jobs or when they go unemployed or their employer changes their insurance policy. Medicare for All is comprehensive health care, covers all basic needs, including home health care. It allows you to go to any doctor you want, which many private insurance company programs do not. So if you want comprehensive health care, freedom of choice regarding doctor or hospital, no more than $200 a year for prescription drugs, taking on the drug companies and the insurance companies, moving to Medicare for All is the way to go.
Senator Harris, you started out.
And by the way, we need to also make something very clear. Like you said, 50 million people lose their healthcare insurance companies each year, by the way, when the company that they're working with changes healthcare insurance companies. This happened to me. Every year, our company would look for a cheaper insurance company. And so one year we might have, what is that thing called? I can't think of the name. But I think at one point we never had Aetna. There was another one. Starts with a U, but whatever. But my point is, we start with something like Aetna, and then it changes over to United Health. That's what it was. And then it goes to something else. But they are looking for the cheaper insurance that they can get. That's not my choice. I don't get choice in that. This notion that you got to trust the American public. The American public knows what's right for it. The American public doesn't get a choice. If you are working at a company, that company changes the insurance company. They don't ask you whether or not you want them to change this specific insurance company. They look for the best selection, and they may give you a choice among the selection to which they choose, but that's not you having choice. I hope you understand why that argument is somewhat ludicrous. Every year, 50 million people lose their health insurance because a job changes to something else. That's not their choice. Medicare for All ends all of that. It's comprehensive health care. All of your needs under one umbrella. Buttigieg gets put down. Let's go to this one. This is
O'Rourke, and then go ahead, Mr. Vice
15
President.
seconds.
Here.
Look, everybody says we want an option. The option I'm proposing is a Medicare for all, Medicare for choice. If you want Medicare, if you lose the job from your insurance company, from your employer, you automatically can buy into this. You don't have no pre-existing condition can stop you from buying in. You get covered, period. And if you notice, nobody's yet said how much it's going to cost the taxpayer. I hear this large savings. The president my friend from Vermont thinks that the employer is going to give you back if you negotiate his union all these years, got a cut in wages because you got insurance. They're going to give back that money to the employee?
Matter of fact, they will.
Well, let me tell you something. For a socialist, you got a lot more confidence in corporate America than I do.
Senator Sanders.
1 minute, George.
Go ahead.
All right. 2 points.
Yep.
You got to defend the fact that today, not only do we have 87 million people uninsured and underinsured, you got to defend the fact that 500,000 Americans are going bankrupt. You know why they're going bankrupt? Because they suffered a terrible disease, cancer or heart disease. Under my legislation, people will not go into financial ruin because they suffered with a diagnosis of cancer. And our program is the only one that does that.
I know a lot about cancer. Let me tell you something. It's personal to me. Let me tell you something. Every single person who is diagnosed with cancer or any other disease can automatically become part of this plan. They will not go bankrupt because of that. They will not go bankrupt because of that. They can join immediately. And we're talking 4, 6, 8, 10 years, depending on who you talk about, before we get to Medicare for all. Come on. I've been there. You've been there. You know what it's like. People need help now, hope now, and do something now.
Congress.
Does Joe Biden believe that he's going to be able to magically do something about whatever healthcare plan he's trying to push through the moment he gets in the office? Again, I make the point that I have no idea why he believes that the lift for whatever he's trying to do is going to be that much significantly different than the lift to get through Medicare for all. I accept that it will be a lift. I accept that it will be a push. By the same token, I would rather do it right. We're still talking about healthcare. It's been like 8 years. It's been like 8 years, and now he wants the opportunity to do it again. The centrist, the corporatist position on healthcare, the utopian vision. You should hear FDR speeches on capitalists, like how they come up and they says, "Oh, we have an idea for this, and we can do it in this kind of corporatist way, and we can make it great. You don't have to spend any money at all," like that type of stuff. This is exactly what Joe Biden is doing. Shucking and jiving. The reality of it is Joe Biden's plan leaves millions uninsured. Hundreds of thousands of people will die as a result of Joe Biden's plan. And so this shtick about throwing his dead son on the fire when he's trying to dodge this argument about his healthcare plan, yeah, it might be personal to you. I don't necessarily know why you have this bias in one regard. If you care about healthcare, you care about healthcare. It shouldn't just be quote unquote cancer. I guess my point is people being eaten alive by bills and everything else. Yes, Joe Biden's plan leaves millions uncovered. And a person who cares so much about cancer, you wouldn't think would have a healthcare plan to leave people uncovered in such a way. This back and forth was on point, honestly. And the fact that ABC allowed them to do this for like an hour. I mean, they've been going for, this has been 32 minutes. They've been going at it. And just to add Castro's part of this, because Castro made the point that you're talking about a buy-in and you're leaving millions of people uncovered. And Joe Biden doesn't want to own that and to some degree forgets that he said it. Let's hear him.
We owe a debt of gratitude to President Barack Obama. Of course, I also work for President Obama, Vice President Biden, and I know that the problem with your plan is that it leaves 10 million people uncovered. Now, on the last debate stage in Detroit, you said that wasn't true. When Senator Harris brought that up, there was a fact check of that, and they said that was true. I grew up with a grandmother who had type 2 diabetes, and I watched her condition get worse and worse. But that whole time, she had Medicare. I want every single American family to have a strong Medicare plan available. If they choose to hold on to strong, solid private health insurance, I believe they should be able to do that. But the difference between what I support and what you support, Vice President Biden, is that you require them to opt in. And I would not require them to opt in. They would automatically be enrolled. They wouldn't have to buy in. That's a big difference because Barack Obama's vision was not to leave 10 million people uncovered. He wanted every single person in this country covered. My plan would do that. Your plan would not.
They do not have.
He's so glazy-eyed. Look at this. Wow. Let's keep going.
Have to buy in. They do not have to buy in.
You just said that. You just said that 2 minutes ago. You just said.
He actually did say that 2 minutes ago. He did say a few minutes ago they can buy into the plan. If you rewind this video, you would see in the argument with Sanders and Warren that he did say buy in. Let's hear.
2 minutes ago that they would have to buy in. You said they would have to buy in.
Have to buy in. If she qualifies for Medicaid,
are you forgetting what you said 2 minutes ago?
Be in for it.
Are you forgetting already what you said just 2 minutes ago? I mean, I can't believe that you said 2 minutes ago that they had to buy in, and now you're saying they don't have to buy. You're forgetting that.
I said anyone like your grandmother who has no money.
We need a healthcare system.
You're automatically enrolled.
Automatically enrolls people regardless of whether they choose to opt in or not. If you lose your job, for instance, his healthcare plan would not automatically enroll you. You would have to opt in. My healthcare plan would. That's a big difference. I'm fulfilling the legacy of Barack Obama, and you're not.
I'll be surprised to him.
Joe Joe Biden said that'll be a surprise to him. That would be a surprise to him because Obama's legacy wasn't to try to get health care to everybody. He left 20 million people. If he wanted to do it, he should have did it. Talking about his legacy. He didn't have to need a legacy on health care. He was the president with a Senate and a Democratic Senate, a Democratic House. I mean, come on. Let's be honest. I understand that we're talking to, Democrats are talking to each other. Talking about the legacy of Obama. Get out of here. If Obama wanted to ensure that everybody was covered, then everybody would have been covered. Just saying. All right. Wow, you guys are up late. Chechers Jones, a vote for Biden is a vote for Trump. Yes, off topic. Tried moving the big poster to the other wall and shifting the smaller frame to the left. That will be difficult to do. Beef foe. Many will get tax refunds, which will also reduce costs. Yes, Medicare for all would be a better system. Just saying. Castro out here talking about Obama's legacy. Yeah, I know, right? Oscar Santana. I know, right? I know. Yeah. Trina be fine. Biden wants to cut Medicare and Social Security. Yeah, he's talked about cutting Social Security at one point. Yeah. YOLO Biden pro Medicare for choice. I know, right? All of them are dancing around this Medicare stuff. It gets across to some degree that Medicare for all is popular. Ultimately, they're trying to find some way to take the steam out of it, a right-wing approach to dealing with the healthcare thing from the standpoint of the left, meaning the left says Medicare for all. And they realize Medicare for all is popular, in which case they say, okay, maybe we can get close, but further to the right, so we can have this kind of centrist position on Medicare for all. Why do you need a centrist position on Medicare for all? If you believe that you need a centrist position on it, fair enough, call it something else. The fact that you're calling it Medicare for all gets across that Medicare for all is indeed popular. Let's do it. Let's have big ideas. The DNC should stop embarrassing themselves with Biden. Poor old man. Noel Ebert. Look, I don't think it's the DNC that's pushing Biden. I think Biden has been running for president for 40 years and he wants to be president. Him wanting to be is not enough of a reason for him to be president. There's a difference. So I'll let it go that way. JT, this reminds me of Idiocracy explaining Brondo. That's more like Trump, to be honest. Brondo's more like Trump. At least the guy, the president at the time, was more like Trump. But yeah, just kind of out of it. The public is voting for these people who are just kind of losing their minds. Yeah. Idiocy, man. It feels like we get closer and closer to it, honestly. All right. I'm going to end this. Like, share, subscribe. I have one more on the debate that I want to talk about, the Iraq war vote. Yeah, the Iraq war vote, and I'm going to add the wages one in, the Trans-Pacific Partnership and NAFTA, all that other stuff. Because Sanders gets, he's directing the arguments, even in that one. He directly calling, well, Joe, you were for XYZ. He's being very explicit. He's not doing that for anyone else. Even when he was talking to Buttigieg, he wasn't necessarily directing what he was talking to Buttigieg. He was more so directing it to Biden, even though what he was saying was essentially slapping down what Buttigieg was saying. So I will do that. What time is it? It's almost, it's after 1. I'm going to wait. Let's do it. I'll be back in maybe 20 minutes. Thanks all. Bye-bye. Like, share, subscribe.